All right, students, we are beginning a new unit, Unit 10, representing data. So if you would please turn to the next available right side page. We're going to call it page 90. You should be somewhere in that general neighborhood anyway, but call it page 90. Title it Unit 10, Representing Data. We'll go over those learning targets after a bit. And on page 91, Unit 10 vocabulary, we have 9 words we're going to be learning through this unit, and we're going to reserve this page for listing those words there. All right, so let's go to page 92. Today we're going to talk about dot plots and frequency tables. On page 92 of our journal, the first thing we need to do is we need to define what a dot plot is and what a frequency table is. So go ahead and pause the video and define these. You need to copy these definitions down. Dot plots are a graphical representation to organize small sets of data that uses dots or X's to show the number of times that each value occurs. A frequency table, and in order to understand frequency table, you need to know that frequency means number of times something happens. That's why I've highlighted that within our definition there. A frequency table is a table to organize data that lists categories and the frequency or number of times that each category occurs. So a category could be, for example, the numbers you roll on dice, or the times of the colors of shirts as you're looking at shirts, or whatever you are taking data for. All right, now that you've got those definitions, we're going to take this example of data. And we have grades here for the 5th grade benchmarks. Of course, these are not real grades. I just made these up. But we have 20 values here for our data. And remember, data is just information. Information we want to record or analyze or look at. It's just information that we have collected. And so we're going to take these 20 scores and we want to put them into a representation or a graph that helps us to analyze them more easily. So the first thing we're going to do is create a dot plot. So you're going to need to create or draw a number line, because a dot plot is on a simple number line. And number lines have arrows on both ends indicating that the numbers continue in both directions. Now looking at our data, I've highlighted that our smallest value is 65 and our largest value is 100. And I'm noticing that all of my values end in 5 or 0, which means that I could count by 5s on my number line and represent all of my data. I don't want to count by 1s because it would take up a lot of space. It's values that we don't need, and it would make my graph look cluttered. So I'm just going to start with 65, 70, 75, 80, 85, 90, 95, and 100. All right, so I've got my values listed on my number line. Now, there's a couple of different ways you could do this. You could go through and organize your data from least to greatest to make it easy. Or you could just start listing or putting a dot for each different data point as you come to it. So my first value is 65. Put a dot there. Next one is 75, then 90, 80, 75, 90, 100, 70, 90, 75, 80, 70, 75, 75, 85, 75, 95, 85, 65, and 85 again. Perfect. So now I want to count my dots to make sure I recorded all 20 values on my dot plot. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. And I have all 20 dots recorded. Now that I have my data in this graphical representation, it's very easy for me to begin to analyze this data. I can see that the grade that got the highest frequency was 75 because it has 6 dots, which is the highest occurrence number of times that it happened, and so that has the highest frequency. I can see that 2 grades have the lowest frequency, 95 and 100, because they each just have 1 dot. I could also start to look at how many students received A's, and I could figure that out by counting the number of students that are above 90 or above. And so I would look at this section and just count those dots, and I can see that 5 students received an A. I could even look to see that only 2 students failed it, while the other 18 passed it. Now, for the star, an 85 or above is considered masters. And so I could look to see how many students mastered this test. So I would look at this section here, and it looks like I have 8 students that mastered the test. I could even compare how many are masters versus those who are not. If 8 students are masters, that means that 12 of them are not. So I could say that there are 4 more not mastering the test than those that are, and so on. I could continue to, analyze this data. Okay, so another representation that we could have is a frequency table. So for our frequency table, we're going to record that same data, but then we're going to also add 2 more students that perhaps were absent on the day of the benchmark and came and took it late. So just like with our dot plot, we need to label our categories, which in this case is the grades. So under grade, which is where our categories are going to go, this first column, we're going to label 65, 70, 75, 80, 85, 90, 95, and 100. Now each time we see an occurrence of this, we're going to put a tally mark next to the grade under the column that says tally. So I'm just going to go back. I'm going to use my dot plot to help me fill this in. You can pause the video and do that because I'm going to do it rather quickly. All right, so for 65, I look back and I see that I had 2 dots, so I need 2 tallies. For 70, I look back, I see that I had 2 dots, so I need 2 tallies. Pause the video and finish completing this table for your tally marks. Now I've added the tallies for the data that was on the previous slide here, but I also want to add the tallies for our 2 students that came in late, and so we have a 75 and an 85. Now notice that when I have 5 tally marks, the 5th one is going to go across those 4 so that I can group them by 5s to easily count them. Now under the frequency column, remember frequency is number of times something occurs. So I'm just going to count up my tally marks and record the frequency under that column. Perfect. Now again, I can use this information to help me analyze my data. So if I look at my data here, I can count up my tally marks, or I can add the frequency for different categories that I want to look at. Let's say that again, I want to look at how many students made B and above versus those that did not. So first I would take and count all those that made B and above, and that looks like I've got 6, 79, like 11 students. And then those that made less than a B would be these right here. So I would have 11 students minus 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So it looks like I have 11 students B and above and 11 students below a B, which means that it is equal. I have the same number of students that made B or above versus those that made below a B. And I could go on to analyze this data in any way I wanted. So putting our data into a graphical representation helps us to look at the data in a much clearer picture and analyze that data more easily. Don't forget to take pictures of your notes and add those pictures to your Unit 10 journal assignment.